And it's so simple. If you're in a good space and have good emotions, you attract other good thoughts. And if you're not, it's very difficult to do that. Welcome to another episode of Behavioral Echoes, the podcast where we explore the fascinating intersections of personal behavior, psychology, and success. I'm Christopher Eady and would like to welcome my co-host, Lisa Oburn.
Hello, Chris. And today we're diving into the topic a little bit more of the life-work balance and remote work. We talked about it a little briefly in our prior podcast, and we're going to dive into it a little bit more because it's so important to consider balance in life. We will look at that from the perspective of life, work, and rest. We'll also discuss how remote work can help in this area, including the struggles faced both at an individual and an organizational level.
Great overview. As usual, we're going to dive right into the heart of the matter. Before the pandemic, some organizations had already embraced remote work, but it was a select few. Overnight, the world changed, and entire companies found themselves thrust into a whole new reality. Everybody was working remotely. For a lot of people, this meant a steep learning curve because we tried to figure out how to stay productive and still deliver results at the same levels. As individuals, we adapted. A lot of us better than others. Organizations had to do the same thing. They had to pivot quickly. Some succeeded, others didn't make it and had to close their doors. But as the pandemic's grip loosened, there was a scramble to return to what felt normal. And I think it was driven by a desire to revert to past behaviors and structures because there was no path forward that people planned. And this is where a lot of attention began for people and companies who had found success in the remote work model. I think it led to a seismic shift. And now we're navigating this new terrain with three distinct categories: fully remote, hybrid, and then full-time on-site employees. This constantly reshuffling, endless adaptation leads me to question: is this sustainable? Are we just getting ourselves or setting ourselves up for burnout and instability? We're going to explore some of those challenges and the impact that these ever changing demands have on employees and organizations. You'll want to stay tuned.
And that's really fascinating the way that you phrase that, Chris. I'll share some insight on the impact of remote work on life and work balance, which has a direct correlation to burnout. Having that balance between life, work, and rest gives us the ability to work and be productive on the hours that are best for us. When you think about global interests and global organizations, which is so commonplace now, that old 9 to 5 business structure really doesn't work. You have people that have, time differences of 3, 6, 9 hours. That is huge. We also forget that some people are much more productive maybe in the early morning, and that early morning could be as early as 4 a.m., others in the afternoon, and still others in the evening. So bringing everybody to one place to work together, does it work best for everybody's interests, not just the company, but the individuals? And we're trying to move back to Taylorism or scientific management, which says there's a standard. That's what we were used to. It's been established, and that's the best way to do things. And everybody will be judged by that same standard. But once people started working from home, and there's the options to take mental health breaks as needed, it allows them to disconnect and come back refresh. That could mean going for a walk. It could mean tending to the garden. It could be dealing with caregiver activities, and that could be bonding with the family, taking kids to work. Maybe it's parents that you have to take to different appointments. But the thing that many that have children really embrace during this time, they could actually go to school events that they would have missed otherwise. They have better output and ability to really deliver and improve their mental and physical health. And what this has done is we get better outputs. It's not just based on the clock saying we started here, we ended here, but really doing productive work. And as people adhered to that and really started embracing it, there were less missed days, whether it be sick days or I need a mental health day. But once we put back into that, forced into a standard behavior, it impacted quality, it impacted health, it impacted well being. it really had a big impact as well on those people that fall into D&I, the diversity section. So, Chris, can you share some of your insights on this?
I'll do that. Interestingly, I just want to say a little bit more about D&I. It's interesting because there was a time when that was very overt. And then it was very non-overt. Now that it's overt again and we're talking about it, it's become more of a debate. And I think the bottom line is, and I suggested this in the biology of business, that companies' employee structure, all the way from the boardroom down to the shop floor, should in fact, and if you want to move into other markets, your company should reflect, there should be some representation. I think that's really important. And maybe we need to do a podcast that really dives into that to help people understand the importance, not just from what is a moralistic or a humanistic way of building a business, but what the data says, what the science says, what the facts say, that you really have a better company when you have a more diverse company. And when we go through these standardizations, obviously we just screen so many people out. I don't know if that's the purpose of standardization, but human beings are not standardized entities. In the world of personal change, however, where we deal with this personal development, we always suggest that people begin their mental health wellness with understanding what we can control and what we can't. In general, you know this, we tell people do something for 21 days and it becomes a habit. We should see a connection between the structure of work and the structure of our lives as human beings. There's a major disconnect with companies, however, because their policies and structures typically are designed around profit and not around people. And this shift continues to create situational stress for a lot of people. People have made serious life changes during the work from home era. There are more caregivers in the workforce. There's adjustments to the children's schedules with longer commutes. I know for some people that I have told me, and I know your commute would have been rather long. The interesting thing
Mhm.
is there's so much that has to then be changed, and people have been in this systemic way of behaving, unfortunately, for a lot longer than 21 days. So we're now asking them to change major habits. And when we do that, we automatically start screening out with this standardized policy single moms, a lot of single dads, women, those with disabilities, minority populations who still may reflect customers, they all get heavily impacted. So standardizing policies that force someone to commute 2 hours one way every day is causing a mad scramble for caregiving, childcare options. It's bad business. And you can imagine this is going to impact the deliverables for the organization and the individuals because it increases poor mental health and the number of missed days at work. Let's discuss some things that we can do because obviously this is something that is going to impact individuals. My hope is that organizations will understand it and reach out to people like you and I who understand both the organizational side, that understand change, and can really help them develop plans that help them deal with this issue. What do you think, Lisa? We can begin to offer some of our listeners that they can either suggest to their business, and especially if they're a leader, that they can do with their business.
I think it's great. And I agree completely with what you raised. And even putting in that DNI aspect, because a lot of things as simple as, you said, I'm an example. Yeah, if I drove, it would be about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes one way. I don't like to drive that much. For me, it would be taking public transit. What would that become? A minimum of 2.5 hours commute each way. So that's 5 hours a day. One of the best ways, really, if we look at it for businesses and to get buy in from their employees as to what to do, let the teams decide if they want to work remotely, when they want to work remote, if hybrid works better for them, if the physical space works best. And that's huge because give people that ability to decide as to what works best for them. We also need to take into perspective some people will opt out of being in the office or want to be in the office because they need a change of scenery. They're at home, they got the kids, maybe they have parents or spouse, whatever it is. And this allows the best decision for a team to be productive. They can solve their own issues. They can really decide when it makes sense to come together, when it makes sense not to come together. And this brings us to really a healthy, high performing team. I think that's very beneficial and something that should be considered. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
That may be the most powerful thing we've talked about today amongst everything else, because that's one of the issues that I don't think has been considered. And if that little simple process is implemented, a lot of the issues that we see in a lot of the information right now that's being talked about would probably go away. I think it's really important as a strategy to give yourself mental breaks. I so much appreciate one of my former supervisors who, after every meeting, would say, go outside for 5 minutes, go for a walk for 5 minutes, and was very consistent to the point where I believed it was in his belief system that that was something he should do. And I believe he did it. I started doing it, and it was like, wow, just walking out of this office, walking outside, doesn't matter what the weather was, just taking a deep breath, looking around, really changed the way that I felt. It relieved a lot of fatigue. And that's even after long hours, I felt refreshed. So, regardless of whether you're in an office or at home or elsewhere, taking a break is going to be really essential. Just literally take a moment. Lisa's talked about this in previous podcasts, focusing on your breath, audibly stretch. I mean, really stretch and just take a moment to allow your body to rejuvenate and blood flow. Part of learning how to stop burnout is finding ways to manage your everyday stress. Breathing exercises are simple, they're effective, and it's a way to calm down when you start feeling, I mean, just look, overwhelm hits us all. And that's one of the quickest ways to get it back is just to focus on your breathing.
I really like those ideas, Chris. You mentioned breathing, and yes, it's something that I like, but I also love to practice being mindful. That is something we've also discussed in our podcast. It's being in the present moment, and it helps us to reduce burnout. If we stay right now in the present, we can be much more objective. We can be calm because we're not thinking about what happened and we're not spending our time thinking about what if. There truly is a way to just allow us to think about the present moment, get rid of those other thoughts that are there, and we can really focus. We can reduce all the multitasking, and you can just take a few minutes every day to meditate, which will help you be calm, relax, clear your mind, and also remove many of those negative thoughts.
I like that because the battle that most of us face in life is not with other people. It's not with work policies and standardizations. It's the battle of 6 inches between our ears. We've gone through a lot of great exercises, Lisa, and a lot of them are very simple and allow us to refocus. Can you take us through a quick breathing exercise where you can explain to our listeners what they can do very quickly, no matter where they are? I know that typically you do it on the floor, but how can they figure out this breathing thing, in a simple way?
Thank you, Chris, for raising that. I do have a particular exercise I do for breathing. I do it because I have an autoimmune issue. What this does is it allows me to really help the brain connect and it gets rid of all kinds of negative thoughts, which is huge. So, what it starts with is finding a comfortable position. Sit on a chair, sit on the floor cross legged, whatever your preference is, and put your hands in front of you with your fingers and thumb touching, but not your palms. So keep the palms of your hands separated. Have your fingers pointing up and in front of your heart center or your chest bone, however you want to put it. And that is really how to position your hands. And you have that space outside of the tips of your fingers that are not touching. What you're going to do is breathe in through your mouth and breathe out through your nose and very slow, deep breaths. You can set a timer for between 5 to 11 minutes. And what this does is it reduces the anxiety in your brain. It has something to do with the way that the hands are, which is very important. And it allows you to calm and relax. So breathe in and breathe out. And breathe in and breathe out. And make those breaths as purposeful as possible, using your mouth to breathe in and breathe out through your nose. You'll be amazed as to how calm and refreshed you feel in a matter of 5 minutes.
And just even the silence in that moment helps to redirect our thoughts. We hope that the tips have been valuable Thank you for the great insight, Lisa. Remember, life, work, and rest balance starts with you. It's important to give yourself time for each of those every day. Do not wait to live your life when you're on vacation or retired.
I appreciate that, Chris. And to our listeners, we hope this episode has given you valuable insight and some useful strategies that you can use in your day to day life.
Thanks for tuning in to Behavioral Echoes. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.